Welcome to the Gaggle, where we talk politics in Arizona and beyond. This week, what's behind a decline in child welfare investigations? And the state voucher law is on hold, but will the referendum make the ballot? But first, we start with Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema. She's rumored to be looking at a Senate run. Ron, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Kyrsten Sinema has been one of the worst kept secrets in Arizona for some time now, that she's been considering running for the U.S. Senate against Jeff Flake. And it's something that has sort of reached a critical point now as we move into mid to late August. There are others who want to figure out whether they need to be running for the seat that Sinema currently holds, the 9th district, or should they be running for the Senate themselves. It's creating a logjam for Democrats across the country, or across the state, as they're trying to figure out where they need to be. And it's also getting national interest in Washington as they try and make sense of who they can run against Jeff Flake.
Well, speaking of Washington, D.C., the Democrats there have apparently picked her as their preferred candidate in the race.
Yeah, that's what we've heard, is that the Democratic Senate Committee is looking at backing Kyrsten Sinema. That almost certainly would not happen. They wouldn't be sending out that kind of message unless they had already heard from Kyrsten Sinema themselves. That creates some openings at the House level for folks trying to angle for her seat, and that may include Phoenix Mayor Greg Stanton.
So, Mary Jo, you've been doing some investigative work on the Department of Child Safety, and you found that while calls to the hotline where people report concerns about child welfare, those are remaining steady, but the number of investigations is slightly declined.
It's, yeah, a little more than slightly. It's down about 8% over 1 year, and I got onto this because there was a law passed last year that said certain calls we're just not going to roll on. You know, there's if it's a 3-year-old allegation, we're not going to be able to find the kid. And at the time, the speculation was that this will lead to a minimal drop in investigations. Well, 8% is not minimal. Turns out Department of Child Safety has made some other changes to their hotline protocol. They've sort of tightened up some definitions, and they did a study of past calls that they'd received and found that on a lot of them they went out, and about 42% they went out on calls where they didn't need to do anything, you know, sort of wasting everybody's time. So they're saying, let's try to cut, you know, let's cut those out. And we now have an 8% fewer investigations that's supposedly freeing up caseworkers for more important stuff.
So, Yvonne, the state's school voucher expansion is on hold while they scrutinize the signatures to try to put a referendum on the ballot. There's been some controversy over that. What's that about?
Save Our Schools Arizona turned in more than 111,000 signatures last week. They need 75,321 to make the ballot. They are fighting for every last signature. Already there have been threats of lawsuits. There has been a special action filed over whether or not some of the paid circulators were eligible to actually collect signatures. They're going to try to get some of those knocked off. They are also saying that the language on the petitions did not fit the strict compliance that we've all learned so much about over the past couple of years, and that all 111,000 should be thrown out. Save Our Schools Arizona, they appear pretty confident, although they were upset by a process that was briefly used by the Secretary of State's office in the initial stages of the signature verification process. They departed from their standard practice and allowed like a dozen observers to watch the de-stapling and the early review of the signatures early on. The Save Our Schools folks say that they used that practice as a guise to allow dark money forces such as Americans for Prosperity and the American Federation for Children to get an early look and pictures of some of these petitions, and they're crying foul.
So, Mary Jo, what are you watching for this week?
Well, keeping with this child welfare stuff, we're taking a look at public records and finding out who got access to take a look at child welfare files in the legislature and up in the governor's office.
Interesting, Ron.
Trent Franks has a town hall. We're also looking to see if Kyrsten Sinema or others want to make news.
Yvonne.
On statewide races, we're hearing other Democratic names being floated out there for Secretary of State, some high-profile ones that I think people would recognize, so we'll see where that goes.
That's it for the Gaggle. If you like the video, check out our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. See you next week.